So maybe some of you are surprised that this is still the Sunday night game, talking about the Bears traveling to Los Angeles to take on the Rams, and it's not something like Patriots-Eagles or something like Texans versus Ravens, Deshaun versus Lamar. I kind of get it, but then you also got to look at it from a standpoint of both the Bears and the Rams, in theory, are still in the playoff mix. They certainly technically are. They're not out of it yet. And you're also talking about the second and third biggest cities, the second and third biggest media markets in the country. So, it's not that surprising. Two teams from two of the three biggest markets in your league playing in Sunday night, still in the playoff mix. It's not a surprise that you would keep that game there. Just saying. Maybe a couple weeks from now, yeah, I would agree, flex it out. But they didn't do that. And nor necessarily should they. When you look at this matchup, you could really make the argument that this is critical for both teams. For the Bears, after getting their first win since September last week against a beaten up and bad Lions team, the Bears sit there at 4-5 and entering a stretch of schedule starting with that Lions game where you've got this game against the Rams, you've got the Giants, you've got the Lions again on Thanksgiving, to where you say, if you're a Bears fan, hey, all of a sudden, maybe this season isn't totally lost. They've got a few potentially winnable games. They could get to 7-5 heading into their last four. Keep the delusion alive! But you look at this Bears team, kind of the story of it is on both sides of the ball. This Bears defense has not been as good the past few weeks. They have not been the same elite level defense that they were in 2018. They just haven't been. They've been really bad to start out games. They've been really bad at times coming out to begin the second half, which is just really striking. They tighten up a little bit as the game goes along, but they're not the same. And even if you want to blame the Akeem Hicks injury, that's one guy. One guy should not have that much of an impact on your defense. If it does, you got bigger problems there anyways. And now you're talking about being without Danny Trevathan on the inside for the rest of the season. It's starting to catch up to the Bears just a little bit. But this defense that played so well against the Rams last year, which is maybe why some Bears fans could potentially have some confidence going into this Sunday night game, has to play at that level that they played at last year against the Rams. And you look at this team offensively, you just can't expect much. Montgomery's nursing an injury. He may or may not play on Sunday night, and even if he does, is he going to be effective? And even if he does, even if he had a chance to be effective, would it matter with Matt Nagy being the play caller? Probably not. But then you look at Trubisky and you say, okay, you threw for 3 touchdowns last week against a crappy Lions defense and still couldn't throw for 200 yards. It took till the very end of the first half for the team to finally put some points on the board because you suck. And now you go into a primetime game where both Trubisky and Nagy have been less than stellar so far in their time in Chicago. There are reasons for concern, that is for sure. And then you look at it from the Rams standpoint. You're talking about a 5-4 team coming off of that loss last week in Pittsburgh to the Steelers. Like that's the type of loss that shouldn't happen. Now, the Steelers were playing hard and their defense was playing well. But if you're the Rams, you're the defending NFC champs. You went to the Super Bowl last year. You should be beating a team like that when you have the majority of your core intact. But they didn't. Now they said you're at 5-4. And realistically, if their only shot at the playoffs isn't the wild card already, if they lose this game, that is clearly the only shot they have, because it's really hard to envision both the 49ers and Seahawks getting to 5 losses this year. And it's really hard potentially to envision both of them getting to 4 losses. So the Rams right now are in a position where they got to get to work if they want to make it back to the playoffs this year. And they're not in a great place, in a great situation, and they're playing in a division where there are 2 teams that are clearly better than them right now, in both the 49ers and the Seahawks. And when you look at the problems on that team, I'll start with them on the defensive side of the ball too, where the big moves, you lost Aqib Talib to injury, but you trade away Marcus Peters, so you bring in Jalen Ramsey. Your defense isn't elite, even though you've invested plenty of money on that side of the ball with Aaron Donald, who's always going to be a stud, and Dante Fowler, and now Jalen Ramsey. You've invested all of that draft capital into improving there. You're still not an elite defense. And then on the offensive side of the ball, Todd Gurley isn't the same player he's been before, and he hasn't been able to be nearly the focal point of the offense. It feels like at times McVay's gotten a little too cute for his own liking. which I understand because he realizes, I think, that Goff is just not very good, and Goff has not been very good this year. And for all the crap and all the blame and all the doo-dooing on that Trubisky has received, and justifiably and deservedly so, Jared Goff's not really any different. He deserves a lot of it too because he sucked, period. So you look at two teams where you envision there would be growth and progression out of their offenses, and in particular their young quarterbacks, where there has been regression in both of those cases. You look at teams that aren't getting the same type of production out of the running game that they did the year before. You look at teams whose defenses have both big names but aren't really playing up to standards of expectations. It's a game where something's got to give. Somebody's got to get right a little bit. And when you look at some of the keys up to the game, I look at first for the Rams. The Bears have been a little vulnerable on the ground the past several weeks. You got to get Todd Gurley, somebody else out of the backfield, whoever it ends up being. You got to get them going in the running game early on the Bears. Impose some type of physicality, create some balance, free things up outside in the passing game for Jared Goff and those great wide receivers the Rams have. You got to get to work on the ground, and you got to try and establish it early, because if you can establish it early, it really messes with this Bears defense. I would say for the Bears, too, that when it comes to their offense, whether it's David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen, or it's primarily Tariq Cohen and maybe Mitchell Trubisky, they've got to get something going on the ground. They really need the ground game to help balance out their offense. And they're not getting that. They're not doing that consistently enough, because the play calling is up and down and doesn't have a consistency to it. And the offensive line stinks in terms of as a run blocking unit. They're almost as bad as Cody Whitehair's inability to snap the ball. Just saying. But when you look at this game, you can say other key matchups. Khalil Mack and Leonard Floyd, paging to both of you. The Rams' offensive line has been really bad this year, especially at the tackle position. You've got to be able to get some heat on Jared Goff. If you can get heat on Jared Goff, it is a wrap. And I would say for the Rams, conversely, this Bears' offensive line is also doo-doo. Aaron Donald up the middle, Dante Fowler, Clay Matthews on the edge. Get some pressure on Trubisky early, and especially in prime time. He's going to wilt under the pressure of prime time. So is Matt Nagy. Again, I'm talking about how crazy it is, how similar these two teams are. The only difference is the Bears are fortunate that they haven't yet invested way too much money on their young quarterback like the Rams have. That's about it. Two young head coaches, two supposedly offensive gurus and quarterback whisperers, and you're not seeing it. So in recap here, I'm really surprised when I looked at the spread yesterday. The Rams were 6.5-point favorites. I'm like, we're putting that much money on the Rams? There's really that much difference between them and the Bears? I could see if it was 3 to 4 points. You're giving them 3 points because you're giving them some type of home field advantage. That makes sense to me. But 6.5? Especially coming off of the fact that when they played last year, the Bears owned the Rams, and that was even in spite of Trubisky absolutely stinking up the joint its damn self. You can make the argument that once the Bears played Jared Goff last year, that Jared Goff wasn't the same, Todd Gurley wasn't the same, the Rams' offense wasn't the same, and they still aren't the same. And we're going to make them 6.5-point dogs? Hell with that. I'm not keeping up delusions that I think the Bears are a playoff team or still a Super Bowl contender. Got a long, long, long way to go before we get there. But what I'm seeing right now is where as bad as Trubisky and Nagy have been in their time in Chicago in prime time, that this Rams team is ripe for the picking. Give me the Bears to win this game on Sunday night by a total of, let's say, 19-13. They might almost invert the spread. That's crazy to me. Really? You think the Rams are 6.5 points better than the Bears? Think the Rams are better if you want, that's fine. Think the Rams can win, that's fine. But damn it, if you really think about it, these teams are basically one and the same.